host, Ryan Miller, and for the past 15 years, I've helped hundreds of people to raise millions of dollars for their funds and for their startups. If you're serious about raising money, launching your business, or taking your life to the next level, this show will give you the answers so that you too can enjoy your pursuit of making billions. Let's get into it.
Look, building wealth can require you to take on new and creative ways to build and preserve your net worth. But did you know one of the secrets of the rich on building and preserving wealth is found in art? See, this alternative asset class is a subtle yet powerful way to grow your net worth. So in this week's episode of Making Billions, I bring on my dear friend Maria Brito. Maria is a straight-shooting New York City art curator that works with ultra-high net worth collectors as well as celebrities like Puff Daddy, Gwyneth Paltrow, and more. Join Maria and me as we discuss this asset class and how to get started building wealth within this sector. Working with professionals and being creative in your wealth building efforts are all skills we can use in our pursuit of making billions. Here we go. Hey, welcome to another episode of Making Billions. I'm your host, Ryan Miller, and today I have my dear friend Maria Brito. Maria is an award-winning New York-based contemporary art advisor, entrepreneur, author, and creator. She has helped the ultra-rich and celebrities, including Sean Puffy Combs and Gwyneth Paltrow, to build multi-million-dollar collections in this space. So what this means is that Maria is highly skilled not only in what art will delight investors' eyes, but will also delight their net worth, making her a highly sought-after elite player in the art curation investment space. So Maria, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ryan. I'm so excited. I love you and I love the show.
Well, we certainly love you too.
And I love everybody who's listening. High vibes. I feel great. Thank you for having me. I'm super honored and excited to talk to you about art collecting, art investing, and everything that relates to the things that make my heart sing.
Yes, well, it's so good to have you. And if you can tell, you can see why just from that high energy, that excitement that she brings to the room. Everybody's excited to work with her, myself included. We're certainly honored to have you on this show. We've gotten to know each other a little bit offline. And look, I am so impressed with what you've been able to do. That little introduction I just gave is nothing compared to everything that you've accomplished. And you're just getting started. I have a feeling that you're about to 10x everything that you've even done. But before we get into that, and you're going to want to hang in there at the end where she reveals a lot of her secret pointers on making and preserving wealth in the art space and just finding what you enjoy. But before we get into that, maybe you can walk us through, like, how did you even get into this industry?
Well, I was born and raised in Venezuela, and I moved to the States to go to Harvard Law School because my parents were very conservative and adamant. So for them, art was something that you use either as a hobby, something to nurture your culture and your education and to have great points of conversation with people, or as a collector, but never as a career. So all the things that I really wanted to do with art as a child, because my parents really instilled in me all this love for art history. We traveled a lot. We traveled the world, going to museums. We traveled, always getting this incredible sense of the culture of the places. And they were very open-minded in learning about different cultures and different countries. And obviously art is a very important path to learn that. For them, again, it was like, this is a hobby. Like, people go for dependable careers. And so I did that. And when I moved to New York to start working as an attorney, I started also going to galleries and buying art for me as an emerging young attorney and emerging artist. And little by little, I started getting the bug myself. And so friends would come to me and say, what have you seen in the galleries in Chelsea or in Soho? And is it anything worth buying right now? So I would recommend things to them. And it was a very different world back then, Brian, because there was no Instagram, basically very little to find things on the internet. The websites for these galleries was very rustic. You would have to go physically, or you would have to go and subscribe to these obscure magazines where nobody understood, anything. Because people had that kind of, the art world and the art market has been covered by this veil, this opaqueness for so long. But the truth is that that's not how it is. In other words, once you're in, everybody's fun and friendly. Bottom line is, when I am in my 9th year of practicing law or 8th year, I don't know, I'm like, where am I going with this? I hate this. I was doing leverage buyouts and representing the banks. And I was pregnant with my first child. And so I did an assessment for myself. Look, being an attorney, going to Harvard and practicing in New York is a dream for many people. And the truth is, I'm super grateful for that time. There are very little trainings in life that teach you how to think the way a lawyer thinks. Someone who has to review contracts, pay attention to little details, and being also almost like on call as if you're a doctor, because you have to sleep with, at that time it was a BlackBerry. We didn't have iPhone. So you had to sleep with that BlackBerry under your pillow because you knew at any minute you were going to get an email from the CEO of a bank or the managing director of, an investment bank saying, we need this now, right? And so I feel very privileged to have that background, and it's incredibly helpful really in what I do. But it wasn't for me. And, I had made up my mind. I mean, when I was like, about to have my baby, I was like, I just really can't do this for myself because this is not for me. And again, like, lawyers are wonderful people, but that was not my environment. So I went back to the law firm, and this was the collapse of the 2008, very similar to right now. And it was like, oh, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and, Merrill Lynch had to be sold, and like Bernie Madoff, everything was like this domino effect. But that was really not the reason why I quit. The reason why I left is because that was not for me. I think that getting honest with my desires and my gifts and my passions is what has propelled me where I am today. And I just knew that it didn't really matter. I could go to another law firm. I had already worked in different law firms. I could go and work in-house as an attorney in a company, and that was just going to be more miserable after more miserable. So that's how I started. So that was year 2008. We are here 2023 with very similar conditions. Perhaps right now it's better. I think it is. It's been an incredible journey. I've worked with incredible people. I've built amazing art collections. I've done, great, fun, interesting, profound work too with incredible artists and galleries. And I have curated shows around the world. So that's in a nutshell. I hope I didn't take too much time.
No, you did good. You have such a wonderful background. And by the way, I was in New York during that time too. So I think you and I spoke about that was an interesting time to be on Wall Street. And one of the cool things that you've done is you were able to, as you mentioned earlier, that the art market was very local, right? And so people would rely on you to travel all these things and say, oh yeah, in Soho or these different areas where you're seeing different galleries. And you were able to take that and decentralize it to say, how about I just bring what I see onto social media? And then that led to you working with some pretty impressive people that we talked about before. Is there anything that you're allowed to share about working with the high-end clients, and what was that like working with celebrities?
I had acquired knowledge while buying my very small art collection, but I wasn't an expert. So I had to go and ask questions to a lot of people. Everybody would open their doors and say, yes, I want to talk to you about my gallery, or I want to talk to you about my program. I would figure out how to meet artists in their studios. I would send emails casually and say, hey, listen, I have a blog. And people, the artist said, oh, she's so cool. Let her come in, And so I would share these things on Facebook and Twitter. It sort of got momentum, and people started responding really well. And so I have a friend who lives in Los Angeles, and her husband has worked for many years on the background of the entertainment industry, the music industry. So she sends me a message, and she said, oh, I've been looking at your posts, and I'm fascinated by this new career you've built for yourself, and so dynamic, and I finally understand about art because of you, and thank you so much. And by the way, there is a friend of ours, especially of my husband, who's looking for a person like you. It's Sean Diddy Combs. Would you be open to an introduction? And I was like, oh, shit. Yes, I am open to that introduction. So I go and I meet with a man who was super cool, super kind. Him and I sat down and talked for a long, long time. And one of his concerns was that he wanted an impartial arbiter, because he said, oh, look, I know a lot of these people already. I know artists. I know gallery owners. Everybody knows me. That's the truth. I mean, he's been around he's been famous since he was 20, and so everybody sort of knows him. And he says, but I do want someone who's impartial and someone who can actually advocate for what I want, while at the same time not selling me things that I don't want. I want you to tell me what's worth what. I want you to tell me what's worth investing in. I want you to tell me if this should be something that I should have in my collection. And so I definitely appreciated that moment of humbleness of someone who was already brutally famous and rich, and in telling me, I don't know what I'm doing and I really need help because I want to have a really nice art collection, and what I have so far is not that great. It's a long collaboration that has lasted 12 years, and we went to Art Basel together many, many times, maybe 6 or 7 in Miami. I've been to his homes, and we have worked on different strategies for different things in his collection. It was an incredible opportunity for me, and I feel very fortunate. But not every of my clients is a collector of that caliber with that amount of money. I mean, I have other collectors who have less money, have bigger collections, and I have other collectors who, they spend $100,000 a year and they have great collections too. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We talked about this. It's not necessarily what you read on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, what the art market is. Those are the things that get reported to the news because the numbers are so exorbitant. People have to talk about that. But it's not what it is in general. I mean, working with Puff, I remember that he bought once a South African artist and he paid $10,000 for something he fell in love with. And I told him, yes, this is amazing. We bought it at Art Basel. It was a South African artist, a South African gallery, and it was quality. And he paid $10,000. And that was, at some point hanging next to something else that he had bought that was $25 million. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't want anybody to think that they are being priced out because they don't have this sort of like bucket of infinite cash to buy art. That is not the truth, and nobody should be priced out of collecting. Anyway, I took a lot of tangents here.
No, you're good. And I love the point. So you've dispelled that myth for me as well, is saying like you actually don't have to be ultra mega rich. And that's, people get that. I didn't even realize that, but that was my impression, is saying, no, this is a great way to grow and maintain wealth. But that's one view of it. The other one is finding things that you love that spark some type of emotion, passion, whatever it is. And you see it every day when you walk through your hallway or some centerpiece in your home. And so there's this other thing, just pure joy. And so working with you, or, keep in mind, like these are in the context of investors and high net worth people that are working with you that are on the path of making billions, or maybe they're already there. Working with you, how does that work? Talk about a little bit of how does it work working with an art curator, and maybe just walk us through some of the fun stuff you're up to today.
Look, everybody is different, and my objective is to serve my clients first and foremost. So I have the greatest satisfaction when the clients are the happiest, right? And so there are different types of clients. There is the virgin, the one who has never done anything, right? They don't know anything about the art market. And so it's a lot of my time in education and explaining things. And obviously it's a dialogue. It's a lot of questions you're going to ask. It's a lot of things that are in your head. What's what and why, right? Like, what are the art fairs that are worth going? What are the art fairs that are top, medium, young? What are the museums that acquire young artists? What does it really mean when a museum acquires something? What are the tax write-offs if I want to donate something to a museum, let's say, right? I mean, does that exist? Does it help me? I have had collectors who have very, very big collections, for example, and they have been able to close big financing deals using the art as a collateral, for example. That is a very unusual thing. But what I'm telling you is that this has a lot of creative angles that people use. I have this very vast amount of clients with very different conditions. People sometimes come and say, look, I want to start and I have this budget. And what can we do with it? And how long it'll take, for me to find the right things. And it also depends, like, what are you willing to give in terms of time and attention, right? Because while it is not, I don't want to say it is a serious pursuit. If you want to do things for either the joy of collecting art or for the expansion of learning something new, you're going to have to dedicate some time, right? And that is something that you have to sort of like agree with yourself from the get-go. Some clients of mine don't ever have to meet me and come with me to things because I told you 90% of all these transactions happen online. If you do not have the desire to come everywhere with me, or if you do not live in New York, or if you are in Texas and, there are only 5 galleries in Dallas, you will have this channel through me. And you will get to see things from the comfort of your house or office on your phone or your computer. So there is not one way to do this thing. But it does, for the most successful collectors, it takes a little bit of their time to understand what's happening, right? And why. But I adapt and adjust to whatever they want me to do. I mean, it's like, you want me to go and see your house and measure every wall. Those are things that are fine. I mean, I have a team who does that, but I can do that too. It doesn't really matter. It's about like, what are the objectives? And I come up with a game plan that serves the objective and, successfully accomplishes it.
Yeah. I love that. And, working with someone in your position, I imagine it, so I'm just looking through the lens of my own eyes where, you make a few bucks and then you want to say, all right, I want to put this in places. Well, I mean, are you going to buy a bunch of gold bricks, put them in your house? Or are you going to leave cash in your bank account? The other alternative is a store of value, could be art. And then you have that just like this other guy, which is a phenomenal idea. I didn't even think of that, where you can use art. If you have art worth collateralizing that does have some value, you can actually use that in future as down payments for some of your financing things. But one of the things that I find most interesting is that working with an art curator like yourself or anyone in the industry, but if you want to work for the best, I would say go work with you. But regardless of who that is, one of the cool things about your industry for investors who are around the world is that it gives you access. And you brought this up a little bit offline, and maybe we can get your comments on this, is that, you can go out and you can just look around and see how you feel, right? But you have no idea what's going on. But the cool thing that, the insider track is that working with an art curator to help grow or preserve your wealth, they're able to understand that context. But the thing is you're working with somebody who has the inside track on, we'll say, the chatter that some of the, around the business, around the artists, like you guys are so involved in that you have that inside track on the value of these assets. And both, I don't care if you're buying a business, you're investing in stocks, understanding what's going on behind the scenes legally, of course, no insider trading here.
Well, it's a different industry. You see, I love what you're saying, because in any other, securities industry or whatever, this will be a crime, but it's not. And I have been in this business 14 years, so I know a ton of people. There are so many things happening all the time, and that's the truth, right? I mean, it's a vast market. Not one single person can know everything. It's just way too much. I've tried to weed all this sort of like the things that are not worth talking about, the things that I already know go nowhere. I am very particular about the location of the artist too, because I know that the surroundings can make or break a career. I'm trying to see the context, the information that surrounds also that particular artist to see if there is a viable growth or not. And most of the time I'm right. I mean, the new frontier is that a lot of dealers and a lot of galleries are going to Africa, like Ghana and Nigeria, to find art. It's not African American anymore. It's African. So they're going there because it's the new unexplored territory, and it's hot. I mean, there are articles written about this everywhere. There are, it's a very long trip that people are willing to do because the artists are wonderful. Many of them had like education in London, and they've returned to. And so these are great things. And it's always wonderful. Like I tell some of my clients, this artist lives in Ghana and is frontier market. I tell them. But for people who work on Wall Street, they understand this perfectly. It's not even emerging markets. It's frontier. Are you willing? Yes, I am. Let's do it. And, they fall in love with the art. They fall in love with the idea that they have something in their collection from an artist who lives in Africa. And, wow, amazing. That person could potentially become a big sensation, but it's going to be a whole lot harder than someone who lives in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's well said. So having that inside track on the chatter, knowing where they're from, all of these things that, for someone who doesn't, maybe you made a few bucks and you're trying to invest in art and you just find something you like, it's okay, but it's a little bit risky, what I think I'm hearing from you is you're saying, well, look, we know where they're from. We know what markets are on the rise. We know what artists are on the rise. We understand what makes someone a genius or not. It's so much more than just colors that you like on the wall in a gallery. So working with an art curator. Now, really quick, auction houses. For an investor trying to make money, preserve money, acquire and build up these assets in their lives, auction houses, are they good? Are they not good for people, investors?
Auction houses are good and bad. And I think that this has to be taken seriously. And as I'm telling you, auction houses have a very specific mandate, which is to make money. Auction houses do not have any interest in the career of an artist. Auction houses do not care about their clients that much either, because they charge to buyers and sellers. So yes, they do care, but they don't have any loyalty to anybody. In other words, it's the money. And that's fine. Every business is about money. And I don't have anything against that. But what I'm trying to say with this is that it's like having a real estate broker that represents buyer and seller. Okay. So who are you representing here? Right. I mean, what is really the kind of background that, it's going to make me feel that you're negotiating or that you are keeping my interests, protected. So that's the first thing. Remember that auction houses will always charge this 25%. Auction houses also take the majority of the assets as a caveat emptor, meaning, look, if it's fake, we tried our best to do a due diligence at the very beginning, but we're not going to go all the way back and check everything and see everything. And fakes are a problem. It's not necessarily the biggest problem with newer works. It's more things that are, 100, 200. And so no one who's listening to this, who's going to buy art for the first time, is going to try to buy a Da Vinci painting for $500 million. I don't think that's the case. But I'm just saying that, in those cases, for example, to prove the authenticity of Salvatore Mundi that was bought by the Abu Dhabi family for $500 million a few years ago, the authenticity is still questioned, and we don't know because Da Vinci's been dead for 400 years. So we can't really tell no matter how many x-rays. Now, okay, whatever. That's for another day. That's like, it sounds like a fun crime, detective story. But yeah, auction houses for investors. I don't want to say don't. I want to say be very careful. Do not fall into the traps of, look, when there is a deal that is too good for it to be true, it probably is not that good. I've had clients who are knowledgeable actually, and they felt that there were times, let's say May 2020, right? And they say, oh, people are not going to be bidding and whatnot. And like there are these assets that they got under the value, and it's been really hard to sell them again. They've like reached out to me and say, hey, I got all this during the pandemic. I spent, let's say, $200,000 and I want to sell them at a profit. And I said, that's awesome. But the thing is that the things you bought were not that great. So that's the other thing. You can buy names that are important. Not everything that an important name has produced is good. That's the other thing, what you hire an advisor, because not every Picasso is the same. Not every Basquiat is the same. A drawing has a different value than a painting. Sculptures have completely different value system. So, I mean, look, anybody can learn. The same thing as if tomorrow I decide to become an investor in the stock market. If I dedicate myself to spend, let's say, the hours that the market is open, so from 9 to 4, whatever it is, right? And then 4 or 5 hours at night, like learning extra or whatever, I think that maybe in 2 or 3 years I'll be excellent. Maybe less. I don't know. I'm very smart. I wanna think that, right? But I don't have that time. I don't have the time to be watching CNBC and Bloomberg every minute and be on the computer looking at the phone and, be on investor calls and things like that. I don't really have the time to do that. And because of that, that's not my forte. My husband does that. That's what he does. And that's why, when he would want to give me opinions about what I do, he maybe has a saying in what I buy for my own collection, because he might say, I don't like that, or, whatever. But in the intricacies of the market, someone who is as skilled and intuitive as my husband, who was, he was a stock trader for 20 years. I mean, then he was the CEO of a fintech. I don't think he actually can understand the market the same way I do. So this is just to say that this is a full-time job and business that requires a lot of research intelligence. Intelligence meaning what you're learning and processing, and it's dynamic, it's fast, it changes, and it's full of opportunities. Particularly, if someone just wants to go with an open heart, let's say, like say, oh, okay, I do have this. And we talked about this offline, $100,000 to spend over the course of a year, let's say, or forever. I don't know. I just want to have 10 nice paintings, $10,000 each or whatever. Would you be able to guide me? Yes. That is fun. We can do that. It's possible, right? I mean, and so as I said before, this is a market that has many different ways to get in. And it's not just for, the billionaires. It's not just for Messier Arnaud and LVMH. No, he is a big part of it, but it's not his market.
Nice. Okay. So that is an exciting world. And so dedicating your time, just like you said, hey, in finance, which most people listen to the show, in finance, yeah, if you really think about it, it's taken you decades to get good at making money in the market, whether it's hedge funds or private equity, whatever it might be. But now that same principle applies to the art market. So as we round third base, I'm just wondering if you had a few pointers that you can leave behind for some of our listeners who want to invest, to grow money. Why don't we start with what's one myth about making money in the art market that you want to dispel for our listeners around the world?
Well, I think that we touched on that, and it's like, okay, I need to have billions, or I need to buy the $1 million painting. That is not the case. As I said before, there are plenty of young, fun artists. It's almost like if you are, like your fund, for example, like being a venture capitalist, right? Let's say you put money on 10 companies that are starting, and they are different things. And it's like one is technology, and the other one is, I don't know, fashion, and the other one is sustainability and whatnot, right? And you put a little bit here and there, and, you're like, okay, guys, I love you, woo, but so it's kind of the same in the art world. You may have, let's say, this $100,000 and you want to split them equally. There are fun and interesting things that can be bought for that price. I think obviously at 20, it becomes even better quality, When it starts to become like 50, 100 per per piece, then it's got to be a little bit more serious because we're talking about more money, and then you just don't want to throw your money out. There are great. We also mentioned this. The hottest markets is young female artists and Black artists, because for the longest time in art history, those were categories that were not necessarily pushed, or a lot of women were not really finding their footage in the art world, like their foot, and like they were not getting their recognition. But that changed tremendously. So a lot of young artists, which is a segment we call the ultra contemporary, because these women are 28 to 35, are already having results at auction of million, like $1 million or $1.2 million or $1.5 million, and these are things that were bought by whomever is selling them for maybe 100,000, or they were maybe 50 and things like that. I have a client who bought a painting in 2016 through me, and he paid 30, and he just moved to a townhouse, so we had to go and reassess everything with insurance, and he got reappraised at $1 million. And so, I mean, that's the type of thing that happens in the art market. That we always say that it beats the S&P 500 by, but at least 4 times. But I don't want to say it as a general blanket statement, because it's not true for every art that you buy, right? And so, and you have to, in a way, be extremely strategic. And the competition is brutal too. Like all the best things, you're always going to have to fight a little bit. And that's also why working with an advisor is good, because we are advocates. We are the ones who are calling and, asking and please, and this is a great collector. We have to vouch for the collector. So, there are a lot of interesting things that we can spend a lot of time talking about, but I hope that I'm giving people a glimpse of how things are in the art market and how hot it is. I mean, I think very recently the Wall Street Journal said this is the hottest market on earth. And obviously when we see recessionary times, I think people who do have the money to spend, they go for assets like art, because when you buy a one-of-a-kind painting that is excellent, nobody else has it, and then therefore it's a valuable thing. You can hold it on, you can hold on to it for a little bit and wait and see what happens. And I mean, traditionally, art has really done well during inflation and recession, and it's not necessarily the exception right now. It's just that the last 3 years were absolutely massive. The year of the pandemic was massive. 2021, 2022 were insanely big. So people really bought and bought and bought and bought. And I think what you're seeing right now is that people are becoming much more selective. So instead of just buying 10 paintings a month, maybe they're buying one. That's kind of like what I am seeing and my colleagues are seeing too.
I mean, so there's a bit of a shift in the market, and you're seeing that in a lot of asset categories, and yours is certainly one of them. So it sounds like from what you said, just to synthesize, the myth is you don't have to be a billionaire. You can get started. I think you said $10,000. Like you can get a nice, valuable painting for $10,000. Now that being said, I got to ask, who are some of those artists for people starting out? And it's not just art lovers. I mean, to some degree, but also people who love art but also want to invest. They see it as an asset class that's very important to them in their overall building of wealth and making billions. Maybe if you could share, say, 3 artists or so that are really solid investments.
I'm not going to talk about young artists in that category of the 10,000s and whatnot, because all of those things are unproven. It's just us taking bets, right? But let's say, for example, George Condo is an artist whose paintings, and that's the other thing, it has to be from the Cubist series, because he made a lot of different series. So the Cubist series usually has annualized rate of return maybe of 50%. I mean, it's really crazy. I have friends who spend days doing these algorithm things and calculations that I would not even know how to do. But they get the data and they actually crunch those numbers. So George Condo, who is in his 60s and lives in New York, is a wonderful draftsman, and he's a great painter, and he is represented by one of the best galleries in the world and has had many museum shows. And it's a guy who has that background, that growth of the pop era and the minimalist era. And so he comes with his own language. People love him. He does really well. Then there is Alex Katz. We talked about Alex. Alex is 95 years old, also a New Yorker, and he paints figures and landscapes. If you're ever going to buy anything from Katz, make sure it is a figure. He paints women. Don't buy men. He paints men too. Don't buy the men. Buy the women. Buy the paintings. He just had a very well-received retrospective at the Guggenheim Museum here in New York. Before that, he had 3 months prior, he had another one at the Thyssen Museum in Madrid. He is beloved. And honestly, at 95, I mean, I don't want to predict his demise, but how much longer can he go, right? I mean, he could, especially if you can ever get one of the young, the 1970s or 1980s paintings. those are the ones that are the most valuable because it was the beginning, not the beginning, but a moment in his career where he was really refining his skills. And a dead artist that everybody knows and loves is Andy Warhol. The most valuable asset, for the most part, in any art market conversation is a painting. It's a one-of-a-kind painting, right? But Warhol did hundreds of paintings and thousands of prints. So print is something that a lithograph, a screen print is something that I would recommend to someone who's really young and says, oh, I have no money. I have $2,000. What do I do? Go buy a print for fun, But the Warhol prints are sui generis and they are solid. And particularly the Marilyn prints, he did all these Marilyn prints in different combinations, have shown an insane growth consistently. And there are thousands of those Marilyn prints out in the market because he made, I don't know, I always forget the number, but let's say it's like 2,600. I don't know. They range from, you can still maybe get one at auction for maybe 100,000 or 120,000, and they go all the way to 600,000. And whomever has kept, because the way Warhol intended this was a portfolio of, I don't know if it was 10 or 12 of all the Marilyns in different combinations, right? Whomever has that portfolio intact has been able to see even $2 million for those things, So, I mean, that's the type of print that I would say if you can get a Warhol Marilyn, or even maybe not a Marilyn, but maybe you like a Liz, like he did a Liz Taylor, or like maybe Campbell's Soup or whatever. It's a super insanely solid market. So, but go for the Marilyns because I'm telling you, I myself, some of my clients ask me for Marilyns, and either the ones I find are way too expensive and above what they want to spend, or like we get outbid all the time. I see it's a really hot market, and it will continue to be because that's it. There are no more prints, and Warhol's been dead for many years, and he's the kind of artist that is relevant forever. I mean, at least in our lifetimes, it's very hard to take away from all the things that he did.
Man, that is brilliant. I absolutely love that. So maybe last pointer. So we've talked about many things. You can get started with less money than you think. You don't have to be a billionaire to build wealth in this sector. There's some great artists in this sector if you're just starting out. Now, for those people who, again, are continuing to, as you talked about your husband, who put in all the time as much as you did to understand both of your crafts, for somebody who really wants to understand this, well, the easiest way would be work with you or someone in your field. But for those that just want to understand it, if they're like me, they're just saying, I'll probably work with you, but I at least want to understand what I'm talking about before I work with you. What advice could you give to people just to build skills in spotting great pieces?
I think you should subscribe to ArtNet News,
okay,
which is wonderful. It's a twice-a-day newsletter that gives you what's happening, the overall pulse of the market, ideas, new artists, collectors. It's a mix of everything. And so it gives you a nice angle of what's happening in everywhere, like the auction houses, the museums, the collectors, the galleries, and whatnot. So that's great. I also think that because all the data from the auctions is available on their websites of Christie's and Sotheby's. At least, I mean, there are many more auction houses in the United States, many more, and in the world. But if you just want to have an idea of prices, what things sold for, estimates, etc., you can go to Christie's.com and Sotheby's.com and Phillips, which is the other one. Bonham's is another one that is also big and respected. And see and get a feel for the prices, right? And there are categories. There is this auction houses have sales. As I said before, their number one mandate is to make money. But they have auctions in person in May and November. And the rest of the year, it's all online. Anybody can register and bid if they want to. I mean, remember all the caveats I already gave you, but you can also have the information for free. You do still have to register to see all the numbers for the most part. I don't know I know that probably Phillips is still not, you don't need to register, but in the other ones you will. Worst thing that can happen is that you get an email from them and that's it, and you can unsubscribe. But I think that knowledge is power. And if you are curious, that is kind of the only place where you do have all this information, without having to pay for like a database that, paying $500 a month, or you don't need to do that. It's like you can go and have a feel. And I mean, that's all the things that I can think people can do from their couches, right? I mean, if you want to go and do the real lit work, go and visit galleries and ask questions and ask for prices, or go to art fairs. Art fairs are places where you can I find that for the uninitiated, an art fair could be very overwhelming because they are usually really big with a ton of things to see. So they can be overwhelming and they can be exhausting. But if you're, oh my God, I'm going to go to Miami in December, and you want to go to Art Basel the week that it opens, and, whatever. Then you go and you ask questions and you ask for prices and you shake hands. I mean, like I said before, there are no real rules on how to approach this business, but to be able to cover it and to strategize about it, it's a full-time job. I have friends who are collectors who've retired, and their full-time job is to do what I do, but they do it for themselves. And they spend their years traveling to art fairs all over the world and visiting, museums and it's their passion. And, they decide what to do and what to buy based on their first-hand observations of the market, because they don't do anything else.
Awesome. Yeah, phenomenal. So as we wrap things up, final comments. Is there anything else you'd like our fans to know, like how to connect with you, maybe your Instagram handle, how to follow you? I mean, I follow you, so I've seen
you too.
Yeah, I've seen all the cool stuff that you post on there. It's absolutely beautiful. But how can people connect with you after the show?
Yes. Well, my website is Maria Brito, BRIT as in Tom, O.com. And that has all the different little, icons, connections to my social media. And my Instagram is Maria Brito _NY for New York. And also my website has a form. So if anybody wants to email me and get in touch with me, that form is there. It's the easiest thing to do. I would be thrilled to hear from you guys. I'm happy to also, like I always give people, you want to go on Zoom and we can have a 1-hour talk about what you want to do. We can do that. I'm very flexible and very excited to connect with new people.
Yeah, I love it. And it's certainly been an honor to connect with you. I feel like you and I aren't done here. So I might be giving you a call when I'm ready here very soon. So just to synthesize everything that we talked about, work with art curators to get the inside track on the variables that affect the value of your investment. If you see it as an investment, but also one that you fall in love with, that you can see it every day, it's not this stock that's held by your broker. It's something that's hanging in your office or somewhere that you fall in love in your kitchen, that draws inspiration, allows you to connect to the artist and connect to something greater than yourself. Work with an art dealer that understands how to get you that, how to understand the variables. To synthesize, don't start with $1 billion. You can actually get started today. You can work with 10 grand. 10 grand could get you started in building your collection and building your wealth in this area. And finally, follow Maria on Instagram. It's wonderful. I do it. I highly recommend it. She has wonderful posts showing art galleries and different ideas and everything, even from your culture. You're sharing stuff. I was learning all kinds of things from you on off of that. Following people, following the experts on Instagram, getting started with where you're at now and building from there, and working with professionals who can give you the inside track are all critical skills we need in our pursuit of making billions.
Wow, what a show. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Now, if you haven't done so already, be sure to leave a comment and review on new ideas and guests you want me to bring on for future episodes. Plus, why don't you head over to YouTube and see extra takes while you get to know our guests even better. And make sure to come back for our next episode where we dive even deeper into the people, the process, and the perspectives of both investors and founders. Until then, my friends, stay hungry, focus on your goals, and keep grinding towards your dream of making billions.